My dear readers, listeners, and of course, friends, who can forget the famous Monty Python sketch about the funniest joke in the world? A lethal quip so devastatingly hilarious that it could kill anyone who heard it. Of course, the humor of the sketch lies in its absurdity, that words, mere constructions of language, could somehow translate into physical death. That joke, deployed as a weapon in wartime, is a stroke of pure Pythonian genius, touching not just on the ridiculousness of war itself, but also on something far deeper, something that may not be so far-fetched after all. We might laugh at the idea of a joke so powerful it could cause instant death, but as artificial intelligence rapidly advances, what was once comedic fantasy might soon be terrifying reality. Monty Python, in their anarchic, irreverent brilliance, were onto something philosophically profound. The very premise of that sketch forces us to confront the strange interrelation between the mind and the body, the notion that something as abstract as language could wield tangible, corporeal power. Today we're moving toward a world where speech, language, images, stimuli can indeed become a weapon, not just figuratively but literally. And the unsettling truth is that AI will soon have the ability to craft words and images so perfectly calibrated to the human psyche that they could, in certain circumstances, cause real profound harm, perhaps even death. Monty Python, in their farcical way, prophesied a dystopia where the mind and body are far more intertwined than we ever thought possible. Now, the relationship between mind and body is an old philosophical battleground going back to Descartes, who famously proclaimed the division cogito ergo sum. The body, he said, was mechanical, mere meat and sinew. The mind, on the other hand, was ethereal, governed by reason, detached from physical processes. But Descartes, I fear, was wrong. As Monty Python implicitly acknowledged, and as neuroscience now affirms, the mind and body are not separate entities. They are hopelessly, inescapably entangled. The idea that words can be mere abstract nothings, that they float harmlessly above us, is laughably naive. Words, my dear friends, can get under the skin, can bypass rationality, can manipulate, enrage, soothe, and, in the right combination, destroy. What do I mean by destroy? Let's be candid about this. Speech, images, symbols, these are not benign. Consider the emotional devastation of a well-placed insult, or the deep psychological harm caused by sustained verbal abuse. Consider the sheer terror incited by a rumor. These are not physical actions, yet their effects manifest in real physiological ways. Raise someone's anxiety, lower their inhibition, trigger their worst fears, and you can drive them to madness. And Monty Python knew this, even in jest. But the age of AI will bring this philosophical problem to a head in ways that we are only beginning to understand. Picture this. A world in which AI has the capacity to tailor speech, images and narratives not merely to entertain, inform or persuade, but to actively manipulate the emotional and psychological state of an individual. A perfectly calibrated message, not unlike the funniest joke in the world, could bypass reason, short-circuit the rational mind, and provoke almost any action. Now, what does this mean in practical terms? It means we could see an era in which AI-generated content could induce emotional breakdowns, trigger violent behavior, incite mass hysteria, and perhaps even induce people to commit extreme acts of self-harm or violence toward others. If you think this is an exaggeration, you simply haven't been paying attention to the convergence of technology and psychology. We already know from well-documented psychological experiments that human behavior can be alarmingly malleable. The infamous Milgram experiments in the 1960s showed that under the right conditions, ordinary people can be led to inflict severe harm on others, simply because an authority figure told them to. Add AI to the mix, and suddenly you're not dealing with mere authority figures anymore. You're dealing with a machine capable of understanding your psychological profile better than you do yourself. Imagine, if you will, an AI system that knows your deepest fears, your desires, your insecurities, your weaknesses, all gleaned from your digital footprint, your social media posts, your browsing history. Now, imagine that system crafting a message so perfectly targeted, so insidiously designed that it triggers an extreme emotional or physiological response. It could rile up a crowd to violence. It could push a vulnerable person over the edge. It could destabilize entire nations, all without a single bullet being fired. Monty Python's lethal joke, once a piece of comic absurdity, now seems less absurd, doesn't it? The idea that language, mere words and images, could become a weapon of mass destruction is not just an amusing premise for a sketch. It is the inevitable result of the digital revolution, where the line between thought and action, between the mind and body, has blurred beyond recognition. And here's the rub. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the pen in the hands of an AI is mightier than 1,000 swords. We're already seeing this on a small scale with misinformation, fake news, and social media manipulation. AI-generated propaganda, deepfakes, and AI-driven chatbots are only the beginning. The future is a battlefield where the weapons are words, and those who wield them, or more specifically the machines that wield them, can drive people to act against their own best interests, and in the worst cases toward violence, despair, or death. What is the solution then? How do we prevent the world from becoming a Monty Python sketch where speech becomes literal murder? We must develop intermediary AIs, systems that serve as filters between humans and the onslaught of digital content, a kind of digital immune system. These intermediary AIs will act as sentinels, evaluating the psychological impact of speech and images before they are presented to us, protecting us from manipulation. They will be the only defense we have against the weaponization of language and image in the age of AI. But this solution too raises a dilemma. Who programs the intermediary AI? Who decides what content is harmful and what is not? What happens when the intermediaries themselves are compromised or weaponized? We are entering an age where the boundaries between mind and machine, between free speech and harmful speech, between autonomy and control, are collapsing. The philosophy of Monty Python, as it turns out, was far more prescient than we gave it credit for. We must recognize that words are not innocent. The age-old separation of mind and body was a comforting illusion. The Monty Python joke, in all its absurdity, hinted at a profound truth, that ideas, images, and language have always had the potential to shape and, in extreme cases, destroy our reality. And in the hands of AI, that potential is magnified beyond our wildest imaginations. The funniest joke in the world? It may be the one that AI tells us, but we might not be laughing when we hear the punchline.